Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone online who's joining us as well. This is the Foundation and the Path to Enlightenment course, where over the next 5 days, I'm going to introduce you guys to the teachings of the Buddha in a way that you can develop a really strong foundation to understand what he taught and how to move the mind to this enlightened mental state. This is a great place to start if you have just been kind of dabbling in the teachings of the Buddha, or even if you've been exploring them for many years, because we're going to be using the original words of the Buddha to explore his teachings, which sounds kind of common. It sounds like, yeah, well, of course, that's what we would do, but it's not always common for people to teach with the original words of the Buddha, and you're going to be able to see what he actually taught and what he didn't teach, and I'm going to help you to be able to learn and understand his teachings and then practice those teachings, which is where you're really going to actually see the results when you're integrating the teachings into your day-to-day life. So there's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that is based in belief. What the Buddha did is he figured out how to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind can be completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others can be eliminated from the mind through training of the mind. Oftentimes people think that these feelings are coming from other people or some external thing, but I'm going to help you see tomorrow in our class through the teachings of the Buddha in a way that you can independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And this is the reason why you can eliminate them. Whereas if it was everybody else that was causing these things, you wouldn't actually be able to eliminate them. So over the next 5 days, I'm going to gradually help you to be able to see this path to enlightenment in an introductory way to get a really solid foundation, kind of building a framework for what it is that the Buddha actually taught. And then I'm going to help you to be able to integrate these teachings into your day-to-day life so that you can see the results through actually practicing the teachings. So again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone online as well. The way that we start our classes is we start with meditation. So I'm going to guide you in a meditation session, and then afterwards I'm going to introduce you to the course, helping you understand what the course is all about. Then we're going to be talking about the life story of the Buddha. We're going to take a mid-morning break. We'll give you guys a chance to talk and meet each other, use the restroom, get snacks, whatever it is that you would like to do. Then we're going to learn what is enlightenment. I'm going to spend about an hour or so just talking about enlightenment itself so you understand what this mental state is. We're going to take an hour-and-a-half lunch break, and then this afternoon I'm going to be teaching Buddhist chanting so that you can learn how to do the actual chanting. And I'll show you all the other things you're going to be learning throughout the week as well. So if you guys would like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. And these chants are over on the cabinet over there. You'll see laminated sheets. You guys are welcome to help yourself and get a sheet if you like. For those of you guys online, you'll find these on our website. If you go to buddhadailywisdom.com and click on free books, down towards the bottom, you're going to see these daily chanting sheets. So these chants that we do, they're in the Pali language. This is the historical language of the teachings of the Buddha that we're going to be chanting in this historical language. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory because everything that he taught was oral, that they didn't write things down. The technology didn't exist during that time frame to write things down. So every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally, word for word for word for word. And this is how they committed it to memory. So with the origins of chanting, you can see that there isn't any rite or ritual or ceremony or worship here. This isn't prayer or anything like that. This is a way for today to ease our mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was used as a learning device and a tool to help people learn and commit the teachings to memory. If you read the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of this, I don't think the Buddha actually created these chants himself, because it would be pretty arrogant to go around and say, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me. A Buddha would have eliminated their ego. An enlightened being would have eliminated that arrogance and putting themselves above other people. So I don't think that the Buddha actually created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death. Because if you've learned from a teacher how to move from the anger and the sadness and frustration and all those other feelings to this peaceful and joyful mental state, which is a permanent mental state, once you're experiencing it, your mind will no longer experience any discontent feelings. And this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you. They were just helping you out of of the kindness of their heart, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's where I suspect these chants actually came from. So if you would like to chant them, you're more than welcome to. This afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit more about the benefits of the chanting, and I'm going to teach you how to actually do the chanting. We'll actually do it together as a group. But for today, or this morning at least, we'll just chant them, and you guys are welcome to join in if you like. After the chanting, I'm going to come in with some guidance where I'm going to actually be instructing you and guiding you during the meditation as we're actually doing it. But then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. We're just all meditating together. Everyone here and everyone online will just all be meditating at the same time. Now, I'm sure you'll hear an occasional sound. There might be a car going by, a bird chirping, a dog barking, or something like this, because you can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. If you have a craving for permanent quietness, when you hear a sound, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. But that's your own mind causing that because it doesn't understand the world is impermanent. You can't be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. So you're going to hear occasional sounds. Someone might sneeze, someone might cough. You never know what sounds might come along. But you can just remind yourself that that sound is impermanent. That is not permanent. It's only temporary. It's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. And therefore, you can see that the world is functioning exactly the way it's supposed to, which is everything around us is impermanent. So you're not going to be able to experience a permanent, quiet environment. So as long as you don't have that expectation, that want, that longing, yearning, you can reside peaceful and joyful during that period of time. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and that's where we'll start today's class. In terms of your body position for meditation, I'm also going to be teaching you this as part of the course. There's actually 4 different positions that the Buddha taught. You're going to learn seated, lying, standing, and walking positions as part of this course. But for now, I'm just going to introduce you to the seated position to help you get started with some meditation, because I'm not going to be teaching meditation until tomorrow afternoon. So oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. That's where they start. So they can sit on the floor, you can sit in a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can sit however you're comfortable. So the guidance that I'm going to share with you is just something for you to consider. It's not a hard, fast thing, because it's not possible for all of us to sit in exactly the same position, because we all have different bodies and we're going to find different things to be comfortable. So you find whatever's comfortable for you. But if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This is going to help soften your seat. And then if you decide to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you like to do that lightly, because if they're real tight, it's going to impede the circulation in the lower body and it can cause pain. Sometimes people like to put their legs off the mat. That gets the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. So that might be something that you choose to do. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way, because different people are going to find different things to be comfortable. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can find whatever's comfortable for you here. There's not just one way to do this. And for anybody who's in a chair, or if you're in a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair, you can also sit however you're comfortable. Sometimes people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me, I'm in a chair here with my legs crossed, so that's an option for you as well. And then in terms of your hands and arms, you can put those wherever you're comfortable. The upper body is helpful if it's erect. If you're kind of slouched like this, the mind can be dull or lethargic, or if you're real rigid, the mind can be overactive or uptight. You would actually like the mind to be attentive and alert during your meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you need the mind to be attentive and alert during your meditation. So having the sternum up and the shoulders back is going to help you to be able to do that. It also make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to ease us into the meditation with some chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on, and then I'll come back in with the guidance for meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Otang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato bhagavata tammo dhammang namasami Supatipanno bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang namami Namo tassa bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang sammuno Sakato rokavitu Anutero purisa Dhamma sati satatawa manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาโพธังมหาคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมหาคะวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to everyone. Nice to see everyone here this morning. I'm going to help you guys to understand the course and introducing you to this course, and then we'll have some more things to learn after that. But before I get to that, I would like to just share that if during this meditation you experience kind of like a bombardment of thoughts where it was just like thought, or you had like a thought and you kind of indulged in that thought and followed it for a while and looked at it and played with it, and then you were like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me get my mind back to the breath. This is completely normal. This is where people usually start out, right? So you're not bad at meditation. Sometimes people think like, oh, I can't do meditation because I'm so bad at it. Well, no, that's exactly the reason why it's important to do it. You're not going to be an expert at anything when the first time you try it, right? And if you're having a bombardment of thoughts or you're indulging in a thought and following it, that's just because the mind is untrained. It's undisciplined. You're not able to control it. And you're not going to be able to get to the point where you can control your mind by not meditating, right? So you're going to need to understand that this is part of the process. Even after you've been meditating for even a year or two, you're going to have thoughts during meditation. The goal of this isn't to eliminate your thoughts during meditation. You'll see that tomorrow afternoon, it's to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. There's certain wholesome qualities that you're developing during meditation, and there's certain unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating. And we'll explore all that tomorrow afternoon, but I'd like to just give you a heads up that you might have noticed these kinds of things when you were meditating, and it's completely normal. Even enlightened beings have thoughts during meditation, but they They notice it right away, they cut it off and let it go, and then there's stillness and quietness in between the thoughts, where oftentimes when you're first starting, there's no such thing as in between the thoughts, because it's just like thought. Okay, so that's all completely normal. So I'm going to introduce you guys to this course so that you can understand what you'll be learning over the next 5 days. This particular course goes from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. each day. You'll see that we take a mid-morning break. We also take a lunch break as well, but we start each day at 9 a.m. We'll start with meditation, and then we generally finish around 3, sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later, but generally right around 3 o'clock. Oops. This is my contact information that you guys are welcome to use at any time that you like. I have it up here so that after the class, maybe you're going to need help afterwards. If you're coming to class a particular day or you're not coming to class a particular day, you don't have to let me know. I don't take attendance during the class. If you're here, I will help you. And if you're not here for any reason, then, that's what you're choosing to do. And wonderful, you do whatever you need to do in the world. You're not accountable to me, whether you're here or whether you're not here. I make these classes available for everybody and anybody, and I provide my contact information so that you can contact me as you're having certain challenges in your day-to-day life, because learning in class is one thing, but then taking it from here and applying it in your day-to-day life, that's a whole nother situation, and you're going to need help along the way. So you're always welcome to reach out to me. Our website has all the details of how to reach me. You can even schedule personal guidance sessions where we can meet privately if you like, just you and I. So this is my contact information. Then in terms of the way the course is structured is today, of course, we're just kind of welcoming you and kind of introducing you to the course. But this is generally the schedule and the plan, that each morning we're going to start with chanting and meditation at 9 a.m. So when you guys come in, you'll see that that's what I'm going to be doing each individual morning. Then around 9:30 is where we're going to start kind of sharing the teachings or having a discussion. Some people call this a Dhamma talk, because the word Dhamma means teachings, and then there's a talk about the teachings. This isn't a lecture, it's not a sermon, it's none of that kind of stuff. It's the way I look at it as a discussion, that I'm sharing things with you, helping you to understand this path to enlightenment. You're asking questions and getting clarification to understand more deeply what the teachings are. So we're going to have something in the morning that I'm going to be teaching you. Then we'll take a mid-morning break, generally around 10:30, 11. We'll take kind of like a little break. Then we'll come back and I'll teach you some more. And we generally take a lunch around 12. Again, sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later, but generally around 12. And then we usually have about an hour and a half lunch break for each individual lunch break, give you guys a time to relax, get some food, have some fun with each other. Sometimes people like to lay down and take a nap here in the temple. You might even see me doing that from time to time. So feel free to use this space however you like. Then we'll come back at 1:30 and I'll share some more information with you about the teachings of the Buddha. Typically, we're focusing on meditation in the afternoons, so you'll see us doing that. Then we'll finish generally around 3 o'clock each day. All of this is going to be going on for about 4 days, where I'm going to be gradually helping students to learn the teachings. But then on Friday, we have a tour where I take you guys out on a field trip outside the city. We go to a forest temple and we go to a temple up on the mountain, Wat Umong and Wat Doi Sotep. And I kind of tour you around the temple and teaching you about the artwork, the architecture, and the symbolism. So it's kind of like a classroom without walls. We just kind of walk through the temple and I start teaching you about the things that you're seeing so that you'll start to understand what these temples are, how they're constructed. Because if you understand the teachings of the Buddha over the next 4 days, then when I take you into an environment where you're learning about the temple, it's like the temple walls start to speak to you. It's kind of like a library in stone, so to speak. It's almost like a scavenger hunt where you're walking around and you're kind of observing certain things in the space and it has meaning for you. Where now you might go into a temple and you're like, oh, that's pretty. Let me take a picture of that. Oh, that's beautiful. Let me take a picture of that. Where when you start understanding the meaning behind the symbolism, the artwork, and the architecture, the temple walls kind of speak to you and really helps you to glean more benefit out of the visit to a temple. So I'm going to be taking students to that. And whether you're here this week or not, or whether you meet people throughout your week that you'd like to invite to this, everybody and anybody's welcome. There'll be people that are here in the course that'll come, but then there'll be people that haven't been here throughout the week that'll come to that too. So everybody and anybody's welcome to that. Then in terms of the course itself, it's based on this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. There's certain chapters in this that I'm going to be discussing and helping you guys with. I'm going to be sharing chapters 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 19. You can get this for free. You can download it from our website. It's completely free for you to do that. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, and we'll use those funds to purchase more books. Or you can order it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. There's also Kindle versions and things like this. It's the first volume of a 13-volume book series, and students will usually use this as a foundational text. I've had some students that have been studying with me multiple years, and they tell me they've read this 8 to 12 times, and each time they learn something new from it. So it's the kind of book that you're going to probably be learning from quite a lot if you're really interested in getting to enlightenment. So it's really helpful to have the book, because there are certain things that are in the book that I don't teach in the classes. And there are certain things in the classes that aren't in the book as well. So the combination of the two will really help you. And then in terms of what you're going to be learning is you're going to learn the life story of the Buddha here in a moment. I'm going to share with you guys kind of an overview of his life story, because if you're going to study this person's teachings, you maybe like to know a little bit about his life. So I'm going to share that with you. Then after our mid-morning break, I'm going to teach you what is enlightenment, so you'll understand what this mental state is. Because if you're interested in journeying somewhere, you would like to know, where am I headed? What is this thing? Like if I said to you, hey, would you like to go to Chiang Rai, Thailand? You'd probably be like, well, what is Chiang Rai? What is there? You'd instantly be interested to know before you could ever make a decision if you'd like to go. And then once you know what Chiang Rai is, then you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it, and then you'll know when you've arrived. It's the same thing with enlightenment, that if you know what it is, then you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it, and you'll know that you've actually attained it once you get there. Then tomorrow, I'm going to share with you what's called the Four Noble Truths. This is to help you establish right view. These are 4 simple statements that you can learn that'll explain to you the problem in your mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding why you experience anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. Because how could you ever eliminate them if you didn't know what was causing them? So I'm going to introduce you to that and help you to learn that in detail by walking you through in a way that you can independently verify. And that's part of the Eightfold Path. I'm going to be teaching you the entire Eightfold Path tomorrow. That's the core central teaching of the Buddha. And if you're interested in getting to enlightenment, you would need to know this teaching inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down. This is the teaching that is going to actually guide you to enlightenment. And all of his other teachings plug into it. So that's why I'm going to be spending a good amount of time to share the Eightfold Path with you. In fact, we're going to spend the entire morning tomorrow with a mid-morning break to help you understand the Eightfold Path. Then on Wednesday morning, I'm going to be teaching you what's called transforming the 3 poisons, craving, anger, and ignorance. This is where you're going to broaden your understanding and deepen your understanding of what's actually causing the issues in an unenlightened mind. Not only am I going to describe the problems, but I'm going to explain the solutions so you know how to solve it and actually fix it. Then I'm going to teach you the 5 precepts. This is a householder's guide to daily practice. These are 5 impactful decisions that you could make, either wisely or unwisely, that will either produce wholesome results for you or unwholesome results for you. If you've heard that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants, that's not what the Buddha actually taught. He doesn't teach that way. That sounds like black and white. That sounds like rules and commandments. I'm going to share with you the original words of the Buddha on the 5 precepts so you can see what he actually taught. And he uses much more illuminating language than just what sometimes people use, no killing, no stealing, and so forth and so on. That's not the words of the Buddha. He didn't actually teach that way. So I'm going to explain to you guys what this is and using his original words, and then I'm going to relate it to everyday decisions that you experience in your day-to-day life, so you'll know how to apply this in your day-to-day life. Then I'm going to teach you what is karma and how does it affect me. This is a natural law that you're awakening to. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's not mystical or magical. It's about helping you to see that any decisions you make, they're going to have certain results or certain consequences. So everything the Buddha taught in one way or another is coming back to this natural law. But we're going to go in on Thursday morning and I'm going to actually explain it to you in detail and helping you to understand how to extinguish all your unwholesome karma, so that by the time you get to enlightenment, you're only experiencing wholesome karma. Only wholesome things are happening in your life. Then I'm going to teach you what is merit and how to receive continued support on the path to enlightenment. Then I'm going to, throughout the course, be teaching you meditation. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to be teaching you breathing mindfulness meditation. This is the primary form of meditation that the Buddha used in order to move his mind to enlightenment. But you would need more than just meditation. You can't meditate your way to enlightenment. That's one of the big myths about the life story of the Buddha. People think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and he instantly got to enlightenment. And this isn't actually true. You can see it in his own teachings that if it was just meditation, he would have just said, hey, just meditate, just go meditate and you'll get to enlightenment. We wouldn't have 45 volumes of books that are this thick of all his teachings if all it was meditation. So there's much more than meditation that you would need, but meditation is important and it's an important part of your practice. So we're going to spend time making sure you understand it and you have plenty of time to practice it. So you're going to actually be practicing meditation 3 times before we actually teach it to you. So you'll get an experience of what it's like and you'll have a frame of reference before I actually teach it to you. And I'm going to teach it to you in these 4 positions. And this is like building a tool belt because you're going to need different positions at different times. You're not going to always be able to be in the same position to meditate. Right now, maybe you can sit in the seated position, but let's just say something happens. Like one time I was in a motorbike accident and I couldn't sit on the floor and I couldn't cross my legs, right? So I needed these other positions to be able to help me at different times. So I'll explain to you how you can use these different positions. And then you're going to learn Buddhist chanting as well. And then ultimately, what I'm going to be teaching you on Thursday is how to integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life. Because if you come here for 5 days and you learn and you have a really great time and you have fun and enjoy meeting new people and things like this, okay, you had a great time, you learned a few things, but where the real benefit comes from is integrating these teachings into your day-to-day life. So I'm going to help you to understand how to do that so you can get the most benefit out of the time that you spend here together with each other. So do you guys have any questions on what you're going to be learning in the class? No questions? Okay. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to help you guys to understand the life story of the Buddha. And this is chapter 19 in this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. I titled this chapter, The Difficult Human Existence, Sickness, Aging, and Death, because these are the things that motivated the Buddha to go on this journey to enlightenment, is he saw how difficult it was in the kingdom that he was living in, and he was interested in helping the people escape that suffering and that discontentedness. As we go, I typically will pause at different times during my talks in order to be able to help you guys to ask questions and get clarification. With this particular talk, it's usually best if I just tell you the whole story of the Buddha and then we talk about questions at the end. But you'll see typically when I'm teaching, I'll kind of pause every 15, 20, 30 minutes and allowing you guys to ask questions. As you would like to ask questions, you're more than welcome to do that. Here at the temple, we have microphones. If you could get a microphone when you're ready to ask questions, just press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on. And you just hold that up to your chin and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can just keep it with you because you might have more than one question or someone around you might have a question and you can share the microphone with the people around you. And then when you're not using it, if you could just turn it off, then we won't get feedback through the speaker system. And then anybody who's online, if you guys would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and unmute your microphone and ask any and all questions that you like. So I've organized this talk into these sections. We're going to talk about the birth, the early life, the journey to enlightenment, and then the teaching career of the Buddha. And then ultimately we're going to circle back and talk about the sickness, aging, and death, because these were some of the motivators that motivated the Buddha to go on this journey to actually experience enlightenment. So this individual that we refer to as the Buddha or Gotama Buddha, there's other ways that people refer to him as. He was born Siddhartha Gotama. That was his name. He was born into a royal family. His mother was a queen. His dad was a king. And during this time frame, when you were a woman and you were pregnant, if you were getting ready to deliver, they would actually take you back to your homeland because you would typically be living with your husband somewhere away from your homeland. So Siddhartha Gautama's mother, being the queen, they organized a caravan to take her back to her homeland so she could be among her parents and her brothers and sisters and people like this when she was ready to deliver birth or deliver the baby. So as she was making her way back to her homeland, she goes into labor pains and they have to stop the caravan, and she gets out of the caravan and she goes over to this tree and she's holding on to the branch of a tree trying to deliver the baby out of the birthing canal because it was having trouble getting out of the birthing canal. And because the baby was having trouble getting out of the birthing canal, it eventually breaks through the side of her stomach and it comes out through the side of her stomach. And because of this, she ends up dying 7 days later. And it wasn't uncommon for women to die during childbirth during this time frame. This was 2,500 years ago. He was born in 563 BCE, we call BCE or BC, right? So 563, it was not uncommon for women to die during childbirth. This was pretty common. So they had protocols in place for this. If you died during childbirth as a woman and your children were still alive, then your siblings would adopt your children as their own. So Siddhartha Gautama's mother had an older sister who adopted him as her own child. So essentially his aunt became his stepmother. It's said at the time of his birth that he walked 7 steps, lotus flowers blossomed under his feet, and he spoke and he said, "This will be my last life." I don't think that this part of the story is actually true. It is in the original teachings. If you read the original teachings, you'll see this part in there. But oftentimes people embellish the story, right? As we go through time, there's been 2,500 years of history since the Buddha died. And oftentimes people will embellish the story, making someone who already did something amazing, try to make him look even more amazing. But we don't need to embellish the story of a Buddha. He already did something very amazing during his lifetime. So I don't suspect that this part of the story is actually true, because if it was true, the next part of the story wouldn't actually be needed, right? The next part of the story is that Siddhartha Gautama's father was interested to know what his son was going to become. So he summoned fortune tellers and advisors, which was a common practice during that period of time, to be able to tell you what your son was going to become, or your daughter, or what have you. So if there's lotus flowers blossoming under your son's feet and they're walking and talking from birth, you don't have to know what this child is going to do. Like, you can tell they're pretty special already, right? So I don't think that part of the story is actually true. But nonetheless, there's these 108 advisors that his father brings in to be able to understand what his child is going to become. And 107 of those advisors tell him that his son was going to be a great monarch, a great ruler. He was going to rule over his kingdom and expand his territory far and wide. And of course, his father's like, that's my boy. All right. Yeah. Right. But there's this one advisor that comes in at the end and he's apologizing to the king. And he says, "Sir, I'm so sorry. I heard those other advisors. They are exactly correct. Your son is going to be an excellent leader. He's going to be an amazing leader, but not in the way that you think. He's going to be a spiritual leader." And his father didn't like this. So just in case this person was accurate, he was trying to change what was going to occur. And he decides to sequester his son in the palace, not allowing him to go outside the palace. So from birth, he kept him in the palace the whole time. And his thought was he wasn't interested in him getting involved in worldly affairs, because if he got involved in worldly affairs, maybe he would be interested to be a spiritual leader. So he lavishes him with all these gifts and all these things that a rich royal father could do in order to kind of get him hooked to this lifestyle of being a king. He gives him all this great entertainment, wonderful fabrics to wear for clothing, outstanding food, beautiful women bathing him and taking care of him. Everything you can imagine royal riches could purchase, he provided this for his son so that he could kind of hook him into this lifestyle of being a king, because he knew that he could never get this kind of lifestyle in any other way. So for 29 years, he lives this kind of life. And at the 29 years old, Siddhartha Gautama realized he was about to become the king, because during this time frame, you would become the king at the age of 30. Your dad would retire and he would be there alongside of you to help you become a better and better king. So at the age of 29, he was like, wow, I'm about to become the king and I've never even been outside the palace. How could I rule over this kingdom if I've never even been in the kingdom and outside the palace? So against his father's wishes and without his knowledge, he went outside the palace, and he takes with him his royal attendant, kind of like his chief of staff. And he goes outside the palace and he sees what's called the 4 observations. He sees a sickly person, he sees an aging person, he sees a dead body, a dead corpse, and he sees a roaming ascetic, someone who's given up worldly life in order to seek a better understanding of life. And when he has these observations, he doesn't really understand them at first, so he needs to ask his royal attendant about these things. So when he sees the aging person, he has to ask his royal attendant, like, what's going on over there? What's happening? And this person's old and decrepit and kind of grumpy and irritable, and the royal attendant's like, oh, this person is getting old and they're not able to work anymore. They're not able to sustain their life so easily. And this was like really monumental to Siddhartha Gotama, because he didn't understand that, because he lived this life of luxury that other people weren't experiencing. But if you grew up that way and you've always experienced that, you might think that everybody in the world is experiencing those same kinds of things. So when he saw this person struggling and in misery, it really had an impact on him. And then he sees a sickly person, and this person, same thing. There's a lot of disgruntledness and frustration and agitation with that person and the people around that person. And he needs to ask his royal attendant what's going on there. And it was the same story. This person was struggling and having difficulties, and now the family was going to have trouble because they wouldn't be able to get the basic necessities that they need in order to sustain their life. Then he sees a dead corpse, and once again, grief, sorrow, despair. And this has an impact on him. And he needs to ask his royal attendant what's going on there. And he explains it to him. And now he realizes, whoa, this kingdom is full of this misery and this despair. And this was all new to him. And he decides that he's not interested in this. So when he sees this roaming ascetic, someone who's given up worldly life, he has to ask his royal attendant, like, what's that person doing? And he's like, oh, this person is trying to figure out all of this stuff. They're trying to figure out the sickness, aging, and death and why this occurs. And he decides that's what he would like to do. He would like to figure out why this sickness, aging, and death is occurring, why people are so disgruntled and frustrated, so that he can help them out of their misery. He felt like if he became the king, he would just be ruling over the misery and despair. And he wasn't interested in doing that. So he decides he's going to leave the royal palace on this journey to figure out how to help these people. And that involves getting to enlightenment. So when he goes back to the palace, at this time, he had a wife and he had a young infant son. And he didn't understand his mind as much as he did by the time he got to enlightenment, but he understood his mind enough that he felt like if he woke up his family and said goodbye, hugged them and kissed them, that he wouldn't be able to leave. So he decides to leave in the middle of the night while they're sleeping. He just kind of leaves out of the royal palace. And he takes with him his horse, his favorite horse, and his royal attendant. As he leaves, he eventually gets to a point where he starts shedding these things. He cuts off his hair, he lets his horse go, he tells his royal attendant he's been a great assistant and lets him, head back to wherever he's going to go. And during this time frame, he's kind of shedding the things that his mind is holding on to. Cutting off his hair is like, I'm never going back to the royal palace ever again. Because during this time frame, the way that they knew you were part of the royal family is you would grow this long, beautiful, flowing hair, even the males. So for 29 years, he grew this long, beautiful, flowing hair. When you go out into the kingdom, people would know you're a member of the royal family, because those commoners like us that were, working in the fields and attending to businesses and shops and stuff like that, we couldn't have long, beautiful, flowing hair because it would get all knotted up and tangled, and we wouldn't have the time to brush it and comb it and shampoo it and take care of it. It was only the royal family that could lay around and have servants taking care of their hair and detangling it and shampooing it. So when you went out into the kingdom with this long, beautiful, flowing hair, they knew that you were a member of the royal family. Where today we just take a picture of the king and the queen and we put it all over the kingdom, and then everybody knows who the king and the queen is, right? We put it on the money and things like this, and now everybody knows who they are, where they didn't have that technology 2,500 years ago. So it was this long, beautiful, flowing hair that let people know that you were a member of the royal family. So him cutting it off at the age of 29 is like, I'm never going back, because nobody would ever think that he was the king because he had cut off his hair. and he wouldn't be able to convince the people that he was the rightful ruler of the throne, right? So this is like, I'm never going to go back to the royal palace. And there's other reasons why you might cut off your hair. You don't have to cut off your hair to get to enlightenment, but I'll explain these kinds of things to you as you journey on the path and what that means in terms of training your mind. But nonetheless, he decides to now go take up training with two different teachers. He studies with this first teacher first. They teach him to hang himself upside down from trees, to lay on beds of nails, to pierce his body with metal implements, to starve himself. This was the techniques that people thought were going to lead to enlightenment. And don't worry, we're not going to be doing any of those things as part of this class, right? You don't have to worry about that. But that's what they were thinking at the time, that if you cause physical pain to this body and your mind could overcome that then you would get to enlightenment, right? So Siddhartha Gotama trains for an entire year with this teacher. And at the end of that 1 year, the teacher says, you're a master of my teachings. You can now share my teachings. And Siddhartha Gotama realized his mind wasn't any more peaceful than it was when he was in the palace. So he decides to leave from this teacher and then go study with another teacher. And this other teacher was also claiming that they understood how to get to enlightenment. But essentially, they were teaching him exactly the same things. Hanging himself upside down from trees, laying on beds of nails, starving himself, things like this. And after 1 year, that teacher determines that Siddhartha Gotama has mastered his teachings. And he says, hey, you can share my teachings. And again, Siddhartha Gotama realized his mind was not any more peaceful than it was when it was in the palace. So he was frustrated with this whole entire thing. And he decides to leave from this teacher and go off on his own. And he goes into the forest and he starts to train his mind on his own, or at least attempting to do so. And he takes this so far that he eats 1 grain of rice per day. Because when he goes off on his own, all he knows how to do are the things that those teachers taught him. So he continues to do those kinds of things initially. And he takes it to the point where he's eating 1 grain of rice per day to sustain himself. And he's on the edge of the forest. He's meditating. His bones are protruding. He's basically skin and bones. His facial bones are protruding. And there's this mother and this young daughter who come by, and they see that he's basically about to die. They can see through the way his body appeared that he was going to be dying soon. And they beg and they plead with him to eat some rice, and they offer him this rice. And he reluctantly accepts this rice, but he realizes in the moment that he had been doing things all in an unwise way. That when he was in the palace, he was living this life of sensual pleasures, where he had everything and anything you could imagine. But when he left, he swung all the way to the other side, where now he was eating 1 grain of rice per day. And he realizes he's not in the middle. He starts to develop what's called the middle way, in doing things in moderation. And this was like a pivotal time when he accepted this rice, that he had this realization. And now he starts practicing this middle way. And this is where his practice really starts to accelerate. And over the next 4 years, he figures out how to get to enlightenment. So a total of 6 years, he figures out how to get to enlightenment. At the age of 35, he attains enlightenment. And he knows that he's enlightened because his mind's completely peaceful. It's joyful. It's calm, it's serene, it's content, it's joyful. He's experiencing nothing but cheerfulness and gladness. His mind is bright and radiant and uplifted. But he understood that the teachings that he had figured out how to get to enlightenment were radically different than what anybody else was actually teaching. Everybody else was hanging themselves upside down from trees and laying on beds of nails and all these other things. So he knew that his teachings were very different, and he wasn't sure whether the world was actually ready for what he had to share with them. So he goes to this tree. This tree's in Northeast India. By the way, he was born in Nepal. He grew up in that area, and then he basically was in Northeast India, or at least what we call Northeast India. And he hangs out at this tree for a while, about 7 weeks, contemplating whether or not he should share his teachings with other people. Well, ultimately, after 7 weeks, he decides he is going to share these teachings with other people. And he decides to go back to the area where he was with those initial 2 teachers, and he starts walking back to that area. And when he starts coming into that area, he gets in contact with 5 people. 4 of his previous classmates and 1 of his previous teachers. And when these people see him coming, they start laughing at him. They start joking him. They start mocking him because he has he looks healthy. He's got meat on his bones. He looks bright. He looks radiant. He looks healthy. And to them, in order to get to enlightenment, you need to be disparaging the body, right? So they were still starving themselves. They were still hanging themselves upside down from trees and things like this. So when they saw this bright, radiant, healthy individual coming towards them, they thought that he had given up on the path to enlightenment. So they start laughing at him and joking him and mocking him. But by the time you get to enlightenment, those things don't affect you. Your mind is completely peaceful, completely joyful. It doesn't matter what people say, what people do. You can maintain your peace and you can maintain your joy. So he just walks over to where they're at. He sits down on the ground and he takes his hand and he touches the earth. And he performs the one and only miracle that he ever performed during his life. That when he touched the earth, these animals came to where he was at. There was birds and squirrels and deer and lizards and snakes and butterflies, and all these animals came to where he was at. They just came rushing to where he was at. And these 5 people were like, all right, you've got our attention. What do you have to say? So he sit down, and when they sat down, he explains to them the 4 noble truths, the thing that I'm going to teach you tomorrow. I'm going to share that teaching with you tomorrow. In 4 simple statements, he explained to them the problem that they were having in their mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. And because his teachings are independently verifiable, they could tell in that first discourse that he had figured out how to get to enlightenment, because they could independently verify what it was that he was sharing. So a Buddha doesn't perform a whole bunch of miracles throughout their entire life, trying to convince people that they're a Buddha. Their teachings are independently verifiable, and people don't need to know that they're an actual Buddha. In fact, it's better if people don't know that they're a Buddha, because if you knew, like maybe there was some physical characteristic that made a Buddha, like say there was a certain mole or a certain, turn of the nose or something like that. You're like, whoa, that's a Buddha. Let me be on my best behavior. Let me do that kind of thing, and let me put on a good show here. And one of the powers of a Buddha is that they can observe the quality of your mind, and then they can help you with teachings that are going to help you to improve the condition of your mind. Whereas if everybody was on their best behavior around a Buddha, he wouldn't be able to use that power and that strength. So he only performed this one and only miracle for those first 5 people, just to kind of get things going, get things underway. But after that, he just taught. And people came to learn with what he had to share. And then slowly but surely, people could independently verify his teachings, and they could see that they were actually working because their mind was improving. The condition of their mind in their life was gradually improving. So his community just grows and grows and grows and grows. One of the ways that it grows is other teachers who were claiming that they knew how to get to enlightenment would sometimes come and talk with the Buddha. And they would oftentimes bring their students with them. And as they were talking and they were having discussions, sometimes the teachers would get so angry and frustrated that they would get up and storm out of the meeting. And the students were like, whoa, our teacher's not enlightened. And now those students would become students of the Buddha. And then sometimes the Buddha and this teacher would talk in such a way that this teacher could tell that the Buddha was enlightened and they weren't, and then they would actually become a student of the Buddha, and they would bring with them all their students. So this is how the community of people that were studying with the Buddha just grew and grew and grew and grew. So he taught from the age of 35 until the age of 80. And countless people got to enlightenment. 45 years of teaching. There was just massive numbers of people that were learning and growing and developing as students and learning directly from the Buddha. He eventually dies at the age of 80, and then shortly after, they document his teachings and they write them down so that they have them for future generations. Because by the time you get to enlightenment, whatever you've learned to get to enlightenment, you will never forget that. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is performing optimally, where it's focused, it's concentrated, you have clarity of mind, you have deep memory, and the teachings that it took for you to get to this enlightened mental state, you'll never forget those ever. So there were countless people who were enlightened by the time that the Buddha died, but 500 of them came together right after his death, and they agreed this is what he actually taught us that led to our enlightenment. And they documented it because the technology to write things down had existed by that time frame. So they wrote these things down, and now that's what we refer to as the Pali Canon. That's the largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha. And this book series that I share has consolidated that in a manageable way that you could actually learn it and develop with these teachings. So this is what makes a Buddha a Buddha. is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So you can see that you're not a Buddha, but you can get to enlightenment. Sometimes people will tell you that everybody is a Buddha. This isn't actually true. The Buddha didn't teach that. The Buddha taught that a Buddha is very rare in the world. The last one that the world is currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago, and the world isn't aware of one since that time frame. So you can get to enlightenment, but you won't be a Buddha at that point, and you'll be plenty pleased with getting to enlightenment. You don't need to be a Buddha. Your mind will be completely peaceful and joyful. Life will be at ease. You won't have the struggles and difficulties that you might be experiencing now. You'll be able to make wise decisions in all situations that you're in. So this is the life story of the Buddha. And just kind of circling back to the sickness, aging, and death, the Buddha figured out what is causing all of this. What's causing the disgruntledness and the sorrow and the frustration is that when someone is sick, they're craving permanent health. And as long as you're craving permanent health, when this body is impermanent, it's not possible for it to be permanently healthy. That if you're sick, you're craving permanent health, you'll be frustrated and annoyed when you're sick. Or if you're craving permanent youthfulness, where you're craving that permanent youthfulness, when you're aging, you're going to feel disgruntled and frustrated. Or death, either your own death or the death of the people around you. If you're craving permanent life for yourself or other people, when you experience this impermanence and that there's death, you will struggle and have difficulties during that time frame. So the Buddha figured out that it was craving, desire, attachment that was causing the frustration and agitation during these time frames, but also other times too in your day-to-day life. And he also figured out that it was because of birth that we continue to experience sickness, aging, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. If we don't experience birth, then we won't experience all those things. So when you're training your mind to get to enlightenment, you're eliminating the causes and conditions that are producing discontent feelings, but you're also eliminating the causes and conditions that produce continuous rebirth. In this particular course, I don't talk about rebirth very much unless you guys ask questions. It is part of the teachings of the Buddha, but it's not something you need to approach when you just get started like this. But just understand that is part of the teachings of the Buddha, and just like everything else in his teachings, you can independently verify it. Right now, you might not have the wisdom of how to independently verify that you have experienced multiple lives over and over and over again, but in the future, you can acquire that wisdom. In our book series, Volume 11, Chapter 105, we have the 17 different criteria of how to determine and independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But it's in Volume 11, Chapter 105 for a reason, because it's not something that you need to learn right up front. Because what's happened in the past is in the past. It doesn't matter right now. And what may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It doesn't matter right now. Right now, you're in the human state, which is the ideal existence. Your mind experiences discontentedness, and you'd like to solve that. So I suggest you focus on that, the core central teachings. And now as you're making more and more progress on the path, you're seeing improvement to the condition of your mind. There's a point in time where you can learn the cycle of rebirth and all the other things like that, and you'll be able to independently verify when you get to that point. So it's in Volume 11, Chapter 105 for a reason, right? So I suggest you just set the whole cycle of rebirth to the side as you're first getting started on this path. So this is the life story of the Buddha. Do you guys have any questions on what I've shared about his life story or his journey to enlightenment? You have a question? Yeah, go for it. Remember, for those of you guys online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Just need to turn it on. Just press the gray button and hold it.
Yeah. For a long time, I've been told you were born into a life of suffering. And I think you've spoken about this before in sessions that I've attended online. But is this the sickness, aging, and death that they potentially refer to as born into a life of suffering?
Born into a life of suffering means that at the time of birth, the mind is lacking wisdom of what's causing those painful feelings. And because the mind lacks wisdom of what's causing it, the mind hasn't actually been trained to eliminate it. There are certain causes and conditions, namely craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, wanting things to be permanent. And because the mind has that at birth, then there's going to be discontentedness. So for example, like when we're inside the womb, we're hanging out, we're having a good time, we're all by ourselves, we got the food coming in on the umbilical cord. It's like, hey, I got the whole place to myself here. This is pretty nice, right? Well, then we get pushed out into the world, or surgery brings us into the world. And right away, we're discontent from the very beginning. I don't typically use the word suffering. I use the word discontent. Our mind's shaken up. It's unstable. It's unsteady, right? Because we're craving permanence. We want to be inside that womb. And that's why right away they wrap us up in a blanket really tight to kind of mimic that feeling that we experienced when we were inside the womb, right? And now we feel somewhat comfortable, but we still have that underlying craving that's in there. And it's all being caused by the lack of wisdom. So when we're born with the causes and conditions in our mind that allows the mind to continue to have sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. This is, in my opinion, a better way to think about it, rather than thinking about life, and not that you are suggesting this, but rather than thinking about life as like in a pessimistic way, or like it's suffering and oh my gosh, this world is so horrible. Instead of thinking that way, think like, oh yeah, there's definitely some big challenges here in the world, and it's not a peaceful place for other people to stay, but you can get to peace and you can get to joy by training your mind. So even though other people are disgruntled and frustrated and agitated, you can get to a point where your mind's completely peaceful, because it's not about changing the outside world, it's about changing the inner world. And when you change that inner world, that's what's going to fix everything. So you are born into a life where the causes and conditions exist that you are going to be discontent. You will experience those painful feelings. And that's why the Buddha was interested in eliminating birth, because if you eliminate birth, you eliminate sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. But as long as there's birth, you're going to experience those things. So the Buddha didn't say like life is suffering. Essentially what he was saying is if you're born into the world, you will experience discontentedness, and you can escape that. And he shared the escape of how to get out of that discontentedness. Mm-hmm. Any other questions you guys have? You have one? Yeah, if you could get a microphone. Hello to all you guys online. Nice to see you guys. Remember, you guys can ask questions as well.
You mentioned permanence, I believe is the term. So, sickness is craving permanent health. And I guess I'm assuming aging is craving permanent youth and things like that. Is that correct? Okay.
That's what's causing the sorrow and the pain and displeasure. Okay. That's not what's causing the sickness or the aging, but it's what's causing the mental feelings that are occurring in the mind.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm not Buddhist, so I'm definitely trying to wrap my hands around understanding this. But how does fate fit into this? Because some people will say that is that is fate.
Sure. By the way, I'm not Buddhist either. Okay. That's a label that people sometimes adopt in their mind. Mm-hmm. The Buddha wasn't a Buddhist either. So it's completely fine that you are not a Buddhist. In fact, that's important that you don't think that way. So wonderful.
I appreciate it because, you said there's a gap between many Buddhas. Yeah. Permanent. Yeah. I could be a buddy, take out the HA. I could be a buddy, but there's no way I'm ever going to be a Buddha.
Yeah. So oftentimes people think about destiny or fate or good luck or bad luck. Sometimes people think that there's a being like God or some entity, like people refer to this entity as the universe, kind of controlling what we experience or what we don't experience. Sometimes people blame others for what they experience. None of this is actually true reality. There's no such thing as fate or destiny. There's no such thing as good luck or bad luck. There's no such thing as some other being or entity controlling what we experience, or even other people. Other people don't control what we experience. It's our decisions that are leading to any particular result. If we subscribe ourselves to thinking that there's such thing as fate or destiny or good luck or bad luck or God or some entity controlling us or other people as decisions are controlling us, we're locked in. We can't change anything about our life because we can't change any of those things. And that's like a really degrading way, a diminishing way to think about it, because now you're a robot essentially, because there's this fate and you're just going to live out this fate. But what you can see if you look at it closely is that anything that you experience is a result of decisions that you make. And because of that, if there's anything that's going on in your life that you don't particularly care for, you just cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. And this is the beauty about understanding the natural law of karma and where that comes from. So where people have trouble to see that there's no such thing as fate or things like this, what I invite them to do, because you'd like to independently verify, don't just believe what I'm saying. Don't believe people that say there's fate, but don't believe someone who says there isn't fate either. You've got to see it for yourself, is to be able to see that you have free will and that everything you experience is a result of your decisions. You just ask yourself, who chose where you're sitting right now? Who chose the hairstyle that you have? Who chose the clothes that you wear? Who chose whether you had breakfast this morning or not, or what you had for breakfast? Who chooses where you live? Who chooses where you work? Who chooses what friends you have? We could go on and on and on. These are all choices that we make individually as a person, because we have free will. And then we experience the consequences of those decisions. But when we experience unwholesome results in our life, in the unenlightened state with a lack of wisdom, we will tend to blame other people. We will say, oh, it's because of these people that I'm experiencing that, or it's because of God, or the universe, or it's destiny, or it's fate. And as long as someone does that, then they're not able to cultivate the wisdom that is lacking, that's leading to those unwholesome results. Because if we blame other people for what we experience, then we never cultivate the wisdom to make better decisions to now experience something different, right? So you need to be able to look at it, and you'll be able to see more and more if you're here throughout the week, where I'll help you to be able to see this, where it's all coming from your own decisions. There's not some pre-planned destiny or fate that each being is going to experience. That's like a template, and now there's nothing you can do to change your life. And this isn't the way that the world's constructed, but you need to be able to see it for yourself. All right. I don't see any other questions here online anywhere or here at the temple. Okay. You have a question? Yes, sir. If you guys could use the mics.
So,
I think you turned it off. It was working at first. There it is.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about people are responsible for creating the action and reaction, the consequences. So it's a form of karma, right?
That is karma, yep.
But I have a question. Is it not possible that we can bear the consequences of other people's karma? For example, it could be a political leader who chooses a way that people should live their lives, or it could be somebody in our lives too. So can we, I understand that we can be responsible for our action and reaction ourselves, and we can have the power to determine that. But what about other people? What about other people's karma and the consequences that they can have, that their actions can have upon us?
Yeah, there's no ability for you to experience other people's karma. You're experiencing your own results of your own decisions. I'm going to show you on Thursday the words of the Buddha where he talks about this, because like using your example, if someone's living in a country and then there's an elected leader, this group of people that are living in this country have chosen that elected leader. And now that individual is choosing to live in that country where they could choose to leave. So if we choose to live in that country, then now, because that elected leader is making decisions, we're experiencing the consequences of our decisions, where we could choose to leave that country potentially. Of course, in some situations, you don't have the financial resources to do that, but that's also a choice that we don't have the financial resources. We haven't been able to earn the money to choose to leave out of here. So we're always experiencing the consequences of our own decisions. And if there's anything that we don't particularly care for, we can choose to leave. We can live somewhere else if that's what we choose. So even in that situation where an elected leader is making decisions, there's still a choice that you're making to live in that place. And oftentimes people are holding on to the friends and the family or the land or the job or some other thing. They're holding on and clinging to this, being unwilling to let it go and go somewhere else. And now they're going to be experiencing the results of decisions that they're making by staying in that situation rather than just choosing to leave. So it's always your decisions that you're experiencing, not other people's. And now if you choose to associate, let's take it down a little bit lower. Let's just say friends. Let's just say you choose certain friends. And now choosing that friend, like say I grew up with a person all throughout my life. We've been friends since I'm 8 years old, 10 years old. But let's just say somewhere around 18 years old, this person started selling drugs, illegal drugs. And now at the age of 20, 25, 30, I've known this person sells illegal drugs. They don't ever offer them to me. They don't ever try to push it on me. But I know this person sells illegal drugs. And I still stay their friend, and I'm holding on to this relationship. Well, now when we're outside walking down the street, a rival drug dealer sees that person and they start shooting a gun at this person and the bullets hit me and kill me. This is a result of my decisions, that I chose to be friends with this person. And I didn't understand the wisdom that this person's into unwise things and it would be better for me to step away from the relationship. But because of me holding on, I wasn't willing to let go. And now I experience death because of my choice to be friends with this person. So it's always our choice. So you can kind of relate that to the political leader too, that it's the same thing. You're experiencing the results of these decisions of choosing to be in that environment. Okay. All right. Oh, you have a question too, Eamon? Yep.
Thanks, David. Yeah, just continuing on that really. Karma can come from previous life.
Yes. So you experience, and we're going to talk about this on Thursday, that you have old Gama and you have new Gama. But the way that this is happening is it's not anything mystical or magical. I'll explain this on Thursday for you. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's from decisions that you're making in this life, but it's from aspects of your mind from a previous life. I'll explain it on Thursday because it'll be a better time to talk about it at that point. Yep. Okay. So I don't see any other questions here. So it's 10:30, essentially. This is where we usually take our first break, give you guys a chance to hang out and talk with each other, get to know each other, get some snacks, stretch your legs, go to the bathroom, all those kinds of things. So I'm going to restart helping you guys to understand what is enlightenment. I'm going to restart that in 20 minutes from now, which will be 10:50. But as an ending for this particular talk, what I'd like to share with you is this. No one ever said life would be easy, but it's also not supposed to be tough. Learning Gotama Buddha's teachings is not easy, but learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha will ensure that life is not tough, right? So what the Buddha saw is that life was really difficult for people out in the village, right? Out in the kingdom. It was very miserable for them. And he had to figure out through this long journey of figuring out how to get to enlightenment himself. And ultimately, when he did that, he came back to the area that he was in. His wife ends up ordaining with him to learn. His son ends up ordaining with them. His stepmother ordains with him. They all started learning and growing, and they actually got to enlightenment. So him stepping away from the world for 6 years to train his mind, he then figured it out and he brought something really wonderful back to the world. It's not easy to learn his teachings, but it's also not difficult either. You just need to have the guidance. You need to to have the resources, you need to have the help. And as you do this inner work, you can grow and develop and get to a point where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful. So life isn't supposed to be tough, right? So by learning and practicing these teachings, you'll be able to see that life is actually very enjoyable. And that's why, being born into a life of suffering, you are experiencing a certain amount of misery as you're growing up and you're experiencing all the difficulties of life, but that's optional. You don't have to do that. You can escape all of that and live a wonderful, wonderful life. And it's the teachings of the Buddha that are going to help you to do that. So that's what I'm going to do throughout this week, is helping you guys to understand those teachings and how to move your mind to this enlightened mental state. So if you'd like to enjoy your break, I'm going to start back up at 10:50 with helping you to understand what is enlightenment, so you understand this mental state and all the details and ins and outs about it. So enjoy your break, and I'll see you back in about 20 minutes. Okay? Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.